If you had to choose between forgiving the person who threw you away and making them live with the truth of what they lost, what would you do? This man found out the hard way. Marcus had built a life most people only dream about. But when he walked through the doors of a crumbling house on Maple Street, he found his own baby photo in a trash bag by the curb. The woman inside didn't recognize him, and what he did next didn't just break her heart. It broke his own. Hello friends, welcome to our story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? New York, London, maybe South Africa or Jamaica? We want to know. Now, let me take you back 31 years, to a cold February night in a small town called Ridgedale, just outside of Memphis, Tennessee. That was the night a 17-year-old girl named Darlene Wilkins gave birth to a baby boy in the back bedroom of her mother's house. There was no hospital, no doctor, just her mother, Lorraine, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and a cigarette between her fingers. Lorraine was 52 years old at the time. She had deep lines around her mouth from years of frowning, and she wore the same faded green housecoat almost every single day. The house smelled like old cooking grease and pine sol, and the wallpaper in the hallway was peeling at the corners. Lorraine looked down at that baby and said 3 words: "Get rid of it." Darlene was shaking. She was just a girl herself, skinny arms, braids pulled back, still wearing her high school gym shirt. She held that baby boy close to her chest and cried so hard her whole body trembled. But Lorraine didn't move, didn't soften. She told Darlene that no child was going to ruin her daughter's future, and that was the end of it. 2 days later, Darlene wrapped the baby in a blue blanket and left him at the fire station on Route 9. She kissed his forehead. She whispered his name, Marcus. And then she walked away. Now, you might be wondering what kind of mother does that. But before you judge Darlene, you need to understand something. She didn't want to leave that baby. She was a child herself, living under Lorraine's roof, eating Lorraine's food, sleeping in Lorraine's house. And Lorraine was the kind of woman who controlled everything. What you ate, what you wore, who you talked to. If Lorraine said the sky was green, you didn't argue. You just nodded. Marcus was placed in foster care that same week. His first home was with an older couple named Gerald and Betty Rawlings. Gerald was 64, a retired bus driver with big, rough hands and a slow, easy laugh. Betty was 59, soft-spoken, always humming hymns while she cooked. Their house was small, just 3 rooms, but it smelled like cinnamon and warm bread every single morning. There was a wind chime on the front porch made out of old spoons, and it would sing every time the breeze came through. Gerald used to hold baby Marcus on his knee and say, "This boy got old eyes. He'd been here before." Betty would just smile and tuck the blanket tighter around him. They loved Marcus like he was their own. Gerald taught him how to tie his shoes, how to catch a baseball, how to whistle with 2 fingers. Betty read him stories every night, the same 3 books over and over until the pages were soft as cloth. But when Marcus was 6 years old, Gerald had a stroke. He passed away on a Tuesday morning in April, sitting in his favorite chair by the window. Betty tried to keep going, but her health faded after that. Within a year, Marcus was moved to another home, then another, then another. By the time Marcus was 12, he had lived in 7 different houses. Some were kind, some were not. One foster father made him sleep in a garage on a cot with no blanket. One foster mother locked the refrigerator at night. Marcus learned early that love was something that could be taken away at any moment, like a lamp someone switches off without warning. But here is the thing about Marcus. He never got mean. He got quiet. He got careful. He watched people. He studied them. And he made himself a promise when he was 14 years old, sitting on a bench outside a group home in East Memphis, with nothing but a blue backpack and $43 he had saved mowing lawns. He promised himself that one day, he would become the kind of man who never made anyone feel the way he had been made to feel. Thrown away, unwanted, invisible. And that boy kept his promise. Marcus worked 2 jobs through high school. He graduated with a 3.8 GPA. He got a scholarship to a state college, studied business, and by the time he was 25, he had started his own small construction company. By 30, that company had grown into one of the most respected firms in the region. Marcus employed over 60 people. He drove a clean black truck. He wore simple clothes, usually jeans and a button-down. But everything about him was solid. His handshake, his word, his character. He married a woman named Janelle when he was 27. Janelle was a pediatric nurse, 26 at the time, with a wide smile and a laugh that could fill a whole room. They had 2 children, a daughter named Nia, who was 5, with big, curious eyes and a habit of carrying around a stuffed rabbit she called Professor Bun, and a son named Elijah, who was 3, quiet like his father, always watching, always thinking. Marcus built them a beautiful home. Not flashy, not loud, just warm. There were drawings taped to the refrigerator and toys on the living room floor, and the smell of Janelle's lavender candles in every room. But what Marcus never told Janelle, what he never told anyone, was that he had been searching for his birth mother for almost 10 years. He hired a private investigator when he was 22. It took 3 years to find her. Her name was Darlene Wilkins, and she was still living in Ridgedale, still in that same house on Maple Street, still under Lorraine's roof. But Darlene wasn't the same girl anymore. She was 48 now. She had never married, never had another child. She worked part-time at a laundromat folding other people's clothes, and she spent her evenings sitting on the front porch, staring at nothing. But what Marcus had no idea what was coming. Because the woman who had forced Darlene to give him up, Lorraine, was still alive. She was 83 years old, still sharp-tongued, still controlling, still sitting in that house like a queen on a crumbling throne. And Lorraine had spent 31 years telling Darlene that giving up that baby was the best decision she ever made. Marcus didn't go to Ridgedale right away. He sat with the information for 2 more years. He thought about it every single day. What would he say? What would he feel? Would he be angry? Would he cry? Janelle noticed him staring out the kitchen window some nights, his coffee getting cold in his hands. She would touch his shoulder and ask if he was all right. He always said yes, but he wasn't. Then one Saturday morning in October, Marcus woke up and knew it was time. He told Janelle everything. She sat on the edge of the bed and listened without saying a word. When he finished, she took both of his hands and said, "Go find your answers, baby. I'll be right here when you get back." Marcus kissed his children goodbye. Nia hugged his neck and said, "Bring me back a rock, Daddy." He laughed. He promised he would. He drove 4 hours to Ridgedale. The town looked like time had forgotten it. Cracked sidewalks, boarded up storefronts, a gas station with only one working pump. Marcus pulled up to the house on Maple Street and sat in his truck for 11 minutes. He counted every one. The house was worse than he had imagined. The porch was sagging. The paint was peeling so bad the wood underneath was gray. There was a pile of trash bags near the curb, and sticking out of one of them, he could see the corner of a picture frame. He got out. He walked to the trash bag. He pulled the frame out. It was a baby photo. A newborn wrapped in a blue blanket. On the back, in faded pencil, someone had written one word: Marcus. His hands started shaking. His throat went tight. He stood there on that cracked sidewalk holding his own baby picture that someone had thrown in the garbage, and for the first time in 20 years, Marcus cried. But what happened next changed everything. The front door opened. An old woman stepped out. She was thin, bent forward slightly, wearing a faded green housecoat. Her eyes were sharp, suspicious. She looked at Marcus and said, "What do you want? We don't need whatever you're selling." That was Lorraine. Marcus wiped his face. He didn't say who he was. Not yet. He held up the photo and said, "I found this in your trash. Whose baby is this?" Lorraine squinted at it. She waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. "That's old junk. Throw it back." "Whose baby?" Marcus asked again, his voice steady but low. "Nobody's," Lorraine said. "That was a mistake my daughter made a long time ago. Now get off my property before I call the police." A mistake. That's what she called him. A mistake. Now here is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. Marcus didn't yell. He didn't confront her. He put the photo in his jacket pocket, got back in his truck, and drove to the laundromat on 5th Street. He walked inside and saw a woman standing behind a folding table. She was thin, tired, with sad eyes and hands that moved slowly over someone else's sheets. She looked up when the door opened, and for just a second, something passed across her face, something she couldn't explain, like she was looking at a ghost. "Can I help you?" Darlene asked.
Marcus looked at her. He studied her face. He could see himself in her cheekbones, in the shape of her eyes. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. But he didn't say who he was. Instead, he said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm looking for a place to do some laundry. Do you work here every day?" She nodded. 6 days a week." He smiled. "Then I'll be back." And that single moment set off a chain of events nobody could stop. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus came back to that laundromat every Saturday. He brought a small bag of clothes he didn't even need washed. He sat in the plastic chair by the window and talked to Darlene. He asked about her life. She told him small things at first. She liked butter pecan ice cream. She used to sing in the church choir but stopped years ago. She had a garden once, tomatoes and sunflowers, but Lorraine made her pull it up because she said it attracted bugs. Marcus listened to every word. He didn't push. He didn't rush. On the 3rd visit, Darlene told him something that made his chest hurt. She said, "I had a son once, a long time ago. I think about him every single day. I wonder if he's okay. I wonder if he hates me." Marcus looked down at his hands. He took a breath. He said, "I'm sure he doesn't hate you." Darlene shook her head. "You don't know what I did." "Maybe not," Marcus said quietly. "But I know what it's like to grow up wondering." Darlene looked at him then, really looked at him. Her lips trembled. She whispered, "Who are you?" But the biggest secret hadn't come out yet. Marcus didn't answer her question that day. He changed the subject. He asked about the house on Maple Street, about Lorraine. And that's when Darlene's whole body changed. She stiffened. She looked down. She said, "Mama controls everything. Always has. I gave up my baby because she told me to. I gave up my life because she told me to. I gave up my voice because she told me to." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm 48 years old, and I still can't say no to that woman." Marcus felt something twist inside him. Not anger, something deeper. Something like grief for a life that had been stolen, not just from him, but from her too. That night, Marcus sat in his hotel room and made a phone call to his lawyer. He said, "I want to buy the house on Maple Street." His lawyer was confused. Marcus explained. The house was falling apart. Lorraine owned it, but she owed 3 years of back taxes. Marcus said, "Pay the taxes, buy the deed, do it quietly." Within 2 weeks, Marcus legally owned the house. But what he did next didn't just shock Lorraine. It shocked everyone. He didn't evict Lorraine. He didn't confront her. He didn't even tell her he owned the house. Instead, he hired a crew from his own company. 6 men showed up on a Monday morning at 7 o'clock with trucks full of lumber, paint, and new windows. Lorraine came out on the porch screaming, "What are you doing to my house? Who sent you? Get off my property!" The foreman, a big man named Dale who had worked for Marcus for 8 years, just smiled and said, "Ma'am, we're here to fix your house. It's all been paid for." "By who?" Lorraine demanded. Dale shrugged. "A friend." Lorraine tried to stop them. She called the police. Officer Kendrick, a young man who knew everyone in town, showed up and checked the paperwork. Everything was legal. Everything was paid for. He told Lorraine, "Ma'am, someone is doing you a kindness. I'd suggest you let them." Lorraine slammed the door so hard the last piece of peeling paint fell off the frame. But the truth was far worse than anyone imagined. Because Marcus wasn't just fixing the house. He was documenting everything. Every rotting beam, every leaking pipe, every cracked window, every piece of evidence that Lorraine had let that house decay around herself and her daughter, while spending Darlene's laundromat money on Home Shopping Channel jewelry and collectible plates that sat in dusty boxes in the living room. While the crew worked on the house, Marcus went back to the laundromat. This time, he brought Janelle.
Janelle walked in carrying a container of homemade pound cake. She set it on the counter and said, "Hi, I'm Janelle. My husband talks about you all the time. He says you make the best conversation in this whole town." Darlene blushed. She actually smiled. It was the first real smile Marcus had seen on her face. Janelle sat down and talked to Darlene for 2 hours while Marcus pretended to fold shirts. They talked about cooking, about church, about Janelle's kids. Darlene's eyes lit up when Janelle showed her pictures of Nia and Elijah on her phone. "Your children are beautiful," Darlene whispered, touching the screen gently with her fingertip.
"You're very blessed."
If you think that was bad, wait until you hear what Marcus did next. The following Saturday, Marcus brought Nia and Elijah to the laundromat. Nia walked up to Darlene with Professor Bun tucked under her arm and said, "Hi, my daddy says you're his special friend. Can you be my special friend too?" Darlene knelt down, her eyes filled with tears. She looked at that little girl and something inside her cracked open. Something she had locked away for 31 years. She looked up at Marcus. And this time, she didn't ask who he was. She knew. "Marcus," she breathed. It wasn't a question. He nodded. His eyes were wet. His jaw was tight. He said, "Yes, ma'am. It's me." Darlene collapsed. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. She just sank slowly to the floor, her knees folding under her hands covering her face. She cried like something inside her had finally been set free. 31 years of guilt. 31 years of wondering.
31 years of praying to God that her baby was alive and safe and not angry at the world.
Marcus knelt down beside her. He took her hands away from her face. He said, "I didn't come here for revenge. I didn't come here to make you feel bad. I came here because I needed you to know that I'm okay. And I need you to know that it wasn't your fault." Darlene shook her head. "It was my fault. I let her make me do it. I was your mother and I let someone else decide." "You were 17, Marcus said. "You were a child, and somebody took your choice away from you." He paused. "But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." But Marcus had no idea what was coming next, because Lorraine found out. One of the neighbors, a woman named Gladys who lived 2 doors down and knew everybody's business, told Lorraine that the man paying for the house repairs was the same man who had been visiting Darlene at the laundromat, and that he had children, and that Darlene had been seen crying and hugging him. Lorraine put it together in about 5 seconds. She showed up at the laundromat on a Wednesday afternoon. She was wearing her green housecoat and her house slippers, which meant she had walked 6 blocks in her slippers just to cause trouble. She pushed open the door and pointed a bony finger at Marcus. "You," she said. "You're that baby." Marcus stood up slowly. "Yes, ma'am. I am." "You have no right to be here," Lorraine said. Her voice was shaking, but not from weakness, from rage. "I did what was best for this family. That baby had no father, no future. I made the hard decision so my daughter could have a life." Marcus looked at her. He looked at Darlene, who was standing behind the counter with her hands gripping the edge so hard her knuckles were white. He looked at Lorraine's house slippers. He looked at the jewelry on her wrists, 4 gold bracelets, on a woman who hadn't worked a day in 20 years. He said, very quietly, "You didn't make a hard decision, Miss Lorraine. You made a selfish one. And the only person who paid the price was a baby who couldn't speak up for himself." He paused. "And a girl who was too scared to say no." Lorraine's face twisted. "How dare you? I raised that girl. I kept a roof over her head. I fed her. I clothed her." "You controlled her," Marcus said. His voice never rose. "You kept her small so you could feel big. You threw my picture in the trash like I was garbage. But I'm not garbage, Miss Lorraine. I'm standing right here, and I own that house you're living in." The room went dead quiet. Lorraine's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time in 83 years, Lorraine Wilkins had nothing to say. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the deed to the house. He set it on the counter between them. "I didn't buy your house to throw you out," he said. "I bought it because it was falling apart. Just like everything you touched." He let that land. Then he said, "The house is being fixed. It's in Darlene's name now, not yours. If you want to stay, you can. But things are going to be different. Because Darlene is done living under your thumb. Lorraine looked at Darlene. She expected what she always got. Silence. Obedience. Darlene looking at the floor. But Darlene wasn't looking at the floor. She was looking right at her mother. And she said, "He's right, Mama. I'm done. Stay with us, because what happens next will shock you." Lorraine stared at her daughter for a long time. Something shifted in her face. It wasn't softness exactly. It was more like the moment when a wall that's been standing too long finally starts to crack. She didn't apologize. Women like Lorraine don't apologize easy. But she sat down in one of the plastic chairs by the window, and she didn't say another word for the rest of the afternoon. That was more than anyone expected. Over the next few months, everything changed.
Marcus moved Darlene out of that house temporarily while the renovations finished. She stayed with Janelle's sister in a small apartment with clean windows and flowers on the kitchen table. It was the first time in 31 years that Darlene had lived somewhere without Lorraine's voice telling her what to do. She said the quiet scared her at first. Then she said it felt like breathing for the first time. The house took 3 months to finish. New roof, new plumbing, new kitchen with a window over the sink so Darlene could watch the yard while she cooked. Marcus had the crew build a small raised garden bed in the back, tomatoes and sunflowers, just like she used to have. When Darlene walked into that house for the first time after it was done, she stood in the kitchen and pressed her hands against the new countertop and cried. Not sad tears. The other kind. The kind that come when something you stopped hoping for finally happens. Marcus brought Naya and Elijah down to Ridgedale every other weekend. Naya called Darlene Grandma Dar from the very first visit, and Darlene wore that name like it was made of gold. She baked cookies with Naya every single time. Butter pecan, her favorite flavor, mixed into sugar cookie dough. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and brown sugar, and Elijah would sit on the floor with a wooden spoon, banging it gently on a pot like a little drummer. Darlene went back to the church choir. Her voice was rusty at first, but by the second Sunday, the choir director said she sounded like she had never left. She started walking taller. She started wearing colors instead of gray. She started laughing, and when she laughed, you could hear the girl she used to be, the one that Lorraine had buried under 31 years of control. And Lorraine? She stayed in the house. She was quieter now. She didn't apologize, not with words. But one evening, about 4 months after Marcus had revealed himself, Darlene came home from choir practice and found something on the kitchen table. It was a small box. Inside was a photograph. Not the one from the trash. A different one. One Darlene had never seen. It was a photo of Lorraine holding baby Marcus on the night he was born. She was looking down at him with an expression that didn't match anything Darlene thought she knew about her mother. She was smiling. On the back, in Lorraine's handwriting, it said, "I was wrong." 3 words. That was all Lorraine could manage. But for a woman who had never admitted to a mistake in 83 years, those 3 words were an earthquake. Marcus came down the following weekend. Darlene showed him the photo. He held it for a long time. He didn't say anything. Janelle stood beside him and rubbed his back. Finally, he put the photo in his wallet, right next to the pictures of Nia and Elijah. That Sunday, they all sat down for dinner together. Marcus, Janelle, Nia, Elijah, Darlene, and Lorraine. It was awkward. Lorraine didn't say much. She passed the bread when someone asked. She nodded when Nia told a story about Professor Bunn getting a haircut. But she was there. She showed up. And sometimes showing up is the first step. After dinner, Marcus and Darlene sat on the new front porch. The wood was smooth and painted white. There was a new wind chime hanging from the beam, the kind made from old spoons. Marcus had found one that looked just like the one Gerald and Betty used to have. It sang softly in the evening breeze. Darlene said, "I don't deserve all this." Marcus shook his head. "That's what she taught you to believe, but it's not true." They sat in the quiet for a while. Then Nia came running out the front door, her shoes untied, Professor Bunn bouncing in her arms. She climbed up into Darlene's lap and said, "Grandma Dar, if I was lost, would you come find me?" Darlene held that little girl so tight. She kissed the top of her head and said, "Baby,
I would walk to the edge of the world and back. Nia smiled. Good, because I would find you too. Marcus looked out at the street, the same cracked sidewalk where he had stood holding his own thrown-away picture. The same town that had forgotten about him. But it looked different now. Not because anything had changed out there, because everything had changed in here. He didn't come back for revenge. He came back for something harder, something braver. He came back to turn pain into something useful, to take what was broken and build it into something that could stand. And that is exactly what he did. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next story.